And it's no surprise, but some of Donald Trump's most ardent supporters on Capitol Hill are defending him ahead of what could be his third round of indictments. Take a listen.
We have yet again another example of Joe Biden's weaponized Department of Justice targeting his top political opponent, Donald Trump. And this week, I want to highlight our oversight work on this two-tiered, fundamentally un-American system of justice.
Why are they doing everything they can to prevent him from being on the ballot in 2024? I'll tell you why. Because Donald Trump will win in 2024. And the left just, they're scared. He's coming back, and he's going to win. He's going to win. He's going to be the 47th president.
That's absolute bullshit. Yeah, that's my reaction. This is the only way that the Democrats have to beat President Trump is to arrest him, smear him, charge him with ridiculous charges, all in a cover-up of Joe Biden's crimes, Hunter Biden's crimes. It's unbelievable.
Some curse words that needed to be beeped out there. Joining me on set is my panel, Olivia Beavers, congressional reporter at Politico, Eugene Robinson, columnist at the Washington Post and an NBC News political analyst, and Rick Tyler, Republican strategist and also an NBC News political analyst. Thanks to all of you for joining me on a very busy day. Olivia, let me start with you. Look, basically, we're hearing what we expect to hear from folks on Capitol Hill. You are seeing Ron DeSantis sharpen his tone just a tiny bit. Is anything different about this potential third indictment than the first two, do you think?
I mean, I think that we've been expecting this to happen. House Republicans have been preparing. And some recent reporting that my colleague just did was that Donald Trump called Speaker McCarthy and the conference chair, Elise Stefanik, to talk about going on the offense about this. So it's going to be adding to the indictments, but they want to say that this is Democrats targeting him ahead of 2024 and making that into a campaign message. The one other thing that I think was interesting, I was trying to ask some DeSantis supporters on Capitol Hill about what they thought. And Chip Roy said, well, the truth needs to be pursued, which I thought was a little bit cryptic, but it just goes to show these campaigns have had a hard time figuring out how to handle these indictments because a lot of polling shows it doesn't really move Republican voters. Our magazine had a polling recently where 41% of Republicans said it had no impact on their views about Donald Trump. We don't know if this one's going to be different, but so far, they're not really moving them.
Rick, pick up on that point because, Olivia, I think it hits the seminal point that it's not moving voters, and Republican candidates still don't know exactly how to respond to this. You can see Ron DeSantis struggling with this in real time.
It's not moving voters because, forgive me, but Ron DeSantis pulled another dull knife out of the drawer because the idea that what Ron DeSantis needed to do is to do something and to act more forcefully, which he didn't do. He became Donald Trump's defense attorney in that press conference. He's defending the president. Why doesn't Ron DeSantis point out the record of Donald Trump while he was in office? $3 million jobs lost, a mismanagement of COVID, making Fauci the president for a full year under mismanagement of COVID, for not controlling the border, it's worse than it was today, for increasing the trade deficit with China, it's worse than today, for increasing the debt of the United States government by $7 trillion. I mean, this is unbelievable. Talk about his record. That's the only way you're going to beat him. It's unbelievable.
Do you agree, Eugene? Should he be talking about his record and sharpening his attacks?
Well, first of all, I congratulate Gabe for getting that soundbite from DeSantis. But sharpening is not the word I would use, actually, because it was not sharp. It was just, it was the tiniest little love tap.
We look for tiny gradations.
No, I understand. I mean, for DeSantis, right, it was a giant leap, but it was the tiniest little love tap. And what does the Trump camp come back with? They come back with bazookas. This is disqualifying. This is horrible. This is terrible. You're not going to beat Donald Trump unless you at least try to beat Donald Trump. You're just not going to do it by defending him.
I want to play a little bit of sound from Mitch McConnell, who talked about the Senate acquitting Trump at his second impeachment trial. Let's take a look at that and do some reaction on the other side.
President Trump is still liable for everything he did while he was in office as an ordinary citizen. Unless the statute of limitations is run, still liable for everything he did while he's in office. Didn't get away with anything yet. We have a criminal justice system in this country. We have civil litigation. And former presidents are not immune from being accountable by either one.
Rick, we played that soundbite because there was Leader McConnell saying, look, we have a justice system, and now the justice system is taking action. And Trump supporters, former President Trump, are attacking the very justice system that McConnell there is saying, look, that's why the justice system is set up.
223 years of peaceful transfer of power was destroyed by one person. We should be the envy of the world. Every American, Democrat, Independent, Republican, should be proud of that record. That was all destroyed through Donald Trump's ego and the fact that he couldn't handle the fact that he lost. And so what they're going to do is undermine all these institutions that have served us well. Are they imperfect? Yes. Will they be imperfect? Because humans occupy them. But Mitch McConnell is right. He understands that we have to preserve the institutions, we have to seek justice, and ultimately citizens will decide Donald Trump's fate. He is no less liable to his conduct and criminality than any other American citizen, and that's fundamental to our system.
Eugene, I hear you agreeing.
No, amen. I mean, amen. It's true. This is the way the law works. Mitch McConnell said it very well. And now that is playing out. And so why are all these Republicans complaining about what is actually supposed to happen?
Yeah.
No one is supposed to be above the law.
Olivia, it's so interesting because, of course, if former President Trump had been convicted, he would not be able to run again. What are you hearing on the Hill? Is there any chatter? Is there any regret? I've been talking to some Republicans who say this is complicated stuff. They're still wrestling with their votes on that day, aren't they?
So I was in the evacuation off the House floor that day, and I remember talking to Republicans that day, the weeks after, and I watched the entire shift. So it started with Donald Trump will never be able to recover from this, and I don't think that the people who were telling me that were ever expecting him to be able to rise up and become the party nominee. And so some of them were quiet about their criticisms, and I think that they're glad for it because some of them I've seen go off and endorse him. Some of them are privately telling me that they don't support him, and then they go and they endorse him. So what you're seeing privately is different publicly, and I think that the party is now starting to move even more towards Donald Trump. January 6th is in the back of their mind, and there's an entire different view that they share publicly about that day versus what we saw right after.
Yeah, Eugene.
I will just point out that these are public servants who hold public office, and they ought to be able to say publicly.
It's not complicated.
Exactly.
Forget about the policy. Just look at the raw politics. Donald Trump lost the House, lost the Senate, lost the White House. Politically, loser, loser, loser. I mean, I don't get it.
Well, what's interesting is I've spoken to a number of Democrats who say, and Eugene, let me put this to you, that Trump is the best person in a general election because they look at some of the polling around President Biden, around Vice President Harris. I mean, is there a real risk in that type of narrative? Because we saw it, frankly,
I do not believe Trump. I believe the record of all the elections after 2016 demonstrates that Donald Trump is not the best person to lead the Republican Party to victory.
We'll lose the House.
All right. I want to pause the conversation briefly to turn to another piece of 2024 news. Last night, West Virginia Democratic Senator Joe Manchin headlined an event in New Hampshire with the political group No Labels, which is weighing running a presidential ticket next year if they are unsatisfied with the Democratic and Republican nominees. Manchin praised the group last night in New Hampshire. Listen to what he had to say.
We're here to make sure that the American people have an option. And the option is, can you move the political parties off their respective sides? They've gone too far right and too far left.
When asked, Manchin would not take being on that potential ticket off the table. NBC's Vaughn Hilliard spoke with No Label CEO Nancy Jacobson, and he joins me now. So what were your key takeaways from that conversation, Vaughn? And thanks for coming back for us.
Right. And Kristen, I think you actually hit at the heart of one of those major questions yesterday in your conversation with former Republican North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory. And that was around the rather secret deliberations that this group is undertaking. They've got $70 million nearly that they have in their war chest to get ballot access for this potential No Labels ticket around the country. Yet they're not revealing their donors. They say they're not a party, even though they are technically registering as a party in several states here. And yet there are so many questions around the deliberations over who they are seeking to try to recruit. Is it Joe Manchin? Is it John Huntsman? Is it Larry Hogan? Those are some of the questions. But the second question that a lot of the voters have on their minds is the extent to which that third-party ticket could potentially spoil the election for either Joe Biden or for Donald Trump even. I want to let you listen to part of my exchange with her about that very question.
If the public doesn't want these choices, we will then offer the line because that line can win. And, you know, nobody knows. I know there's a lot of talk about this spoiling, but nobody knows who the candidates are. How can we know who spoils for who or what side? Because nobody knows what the candidates are.
Would No Labels end its effort if the Republican nominee is not Donald Trump?
I think what we stay true to is if the American people want a choice, and they, on both sides, it looks like they don't want the choices that they're given, so there is a path for victory, to not spoil, but to win. No Labels would offer the ballot line to a ticket to go off and run and win. The only way this ballot gets offered to a ticket is if it doesn't spoil and it wins.
But how do you know that, though?
I mean, this is high stakes. Donald Trump is on the ballot, and as somebody who is a Democrat yourself, and your team has even expressed concerns about a Donald Trump presidency. What are the metric points to know that you guys would not? And listen, we're gonna know the national sentiment, the national mood by that point.
Kristen, I can't say that I walked away from that interview having any better idea come next spring, if it is Donald Trump and Joe Biden who are the respective parties' nominees, whether No Labels will go for it or not. And from your conversation with Pat McCrory and my conversation with Joe Manchin yesterday, the folks who are aligned with this organization are having a tough time putting that marker down. So I think that there is going to be a lot of follow-up questions in the months ahead about whether we're going to see this, what could be a potential major third-party effort, actually take place.
Yeah, it's just fascinating, and it was just a great interview that you did there, Vaughn. Thank you so much for bringing it to us. We really appreciate it. Great reporting. Let me bring my panel back and turn to you, Olivia. No Label says they're not going to make a decision until April. There is a lot of hand-wringing, particularly within the Democratic Party and, frankly, a little bit within the Republican Party, too, because it's not entirely clear what a third-party candidate would mean. What are you hearing about the key concerns around a third-party candidate?
Well, I think that Richard Gephardt has this group that's supposed to counter No Labels. There is fear that basically a moderate independent will be detracting from President Biden and clear the way for Donald Trump. And so that's their argument, is you're helping someone that you don't agree with end up potentially back in office. But also, if you look at it, we have Cornel West running as a Green Party candidate. And if you look at 2016, Democrats blame Jill Stein for basically being the one who pulled the votes away from Hillary Clinton. So that, I think, is where you're also seeing a lot of angst coming back, is will they hurt Biden or just help Trump?
Yeah, Eugene, if you talk to folks within No Labels, Senator Manchin has said this is an insurance policy, and yet in modern history, there's no real example, unless I'm mistaken, please correct me if I am, of a third-party candidate winning, being anything other than a spoiler.
No, that's a third-party candidate is not going to win, is not going to get electoral votes, if it's some sort of moderate centrist, No Label the candidate, it's going to help Donald Trump if it's Trump and Biden. I mean, I think that's very clear. So they should face that. I mean, if they should own that, if that's what No Labels is going to do. And my second question, though, is who gave the green light to this new season of the Joe Manchin show? Right? I guess we haven't been paying enough attention to him. Joe Manchin did. We haven't been paying enough attention to him for a while, and so I guess we will now.
Well, Rick, it's such a great point, because there has been so much focus on Senator Manchin, whether it be how is he going to vote on a key piece of legislation or now. And he is really quite firm in this moment that there is an appetite for a third party. They point to the fact that more than 60% of Americans say they don't like President Biden or former President Trump as a candidate. And he makes the case, look, Americans deserve to have another choice. I mean, does he have a point?
Yeah, sure, but Teddy Roosevelt made Woodrow Wilson president, and Ross Perot made Bill Clinton president, and that's what's going to happen. But look, third parties are fine. Thousands of them have come and gone, and since the birth of the Republic, none of them made a difference in the presidential race. But this one is particularly stupid, because people are uniting under this label. It's a label of no labels, which the reason they can't give you any answers to anything is they don't believe in anything, because what they want to do is assemble two people that have a fundamentally different view of government. So are they a high tax party or the low tax party, the big government party or the pro-life party, the dog leash party, the anti-dog leash party? They don't know, because it's never going to happen, because they don't stand for anything. And it's just dumb and pathetic. And all it's going to do is make Donald Trump president.
All right, we will leave it there. And I do think you raise a really critical point, which is that they did put out a policy booklet, but it does contain very few details. So part of our job as reporters to get some more details about it. Thank you so much for a great conversation, Olivia, Eugene, and Rick.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.